A geography teacher driving home from Sao Paulo. 3 teenage girls walking through a vacant lot. A neurosurgeon standing in a sealed hospital ward. And a soldier who would be dead within weeks. 4 witnesses, 4 completely different lives. None of them knew each other. None of them had any reason to lie. But in January of 1996, in a small coffee town in southeastern Brazil, every single one of them described the same thing. Something crashed near Varginha. Something was captured. And for 30 years, the Brazilian military, and possibly the United States government, have done everything in their power to make sure you never hear this story. Varginha sits in the highlands of Minas Gerais, about 200 miles north of Sao Paulo. Population, roughly 100,000. The kind of place known for its coffee farms, its quiet streets, and absolutely nothing else. In 1996, Brazil was enjoying a period of economic stability. The country had just introduced the real, its new currency, and for the first time in decades, inflation was under control. Life in Varginha moved at the pace it always had. Farmers tended their crops, families gathered on weekends, children played in the streets until dark. Nobody in Varginha was thinking about UFOs. Nobody was scanning the skies. This was not a town of conspiracy theorists or alien enthusiasts. These were ordinary Brazilians living ordinary lives, which is exactly what makes what happened next so difficult to dismiss. The first witness was a man we will call Roberto Mendes, a geography teacher and licensed ultralight pilot from a town just outside Varginha. On the morning of January 13, 1996, Roberto was driving back from Sao Paulo along a rural highway. According to his testimony, given to multiple investigators over the following weeks, he noticed something in the sky ahead. A cylindrical object, roughly the length of a school bus, moving low over the tree line. Its rear section appeared damaged. Smoke or vapor trailed behind it. At first, I thought it was a small plane in trouble, Roberto later told researchers. But there were no wings, no tail, no engine noise, just this smooth, metallic shape losing altitude. Roberto pulled over and watched. The object descended toward a field, approximately 300 meters from the road. He could see the grass flattening beneath it. A sharp chemical smell, like ammonia, reached him even from that distance. He drove closer. The object had come to rest near a small farmhouse. Around it, the vegetation was scorched in a circle roughly 40 meters across. Roberto stepped out of his car. On the ground, he found a piece of debris. It felt like aluminum foil, thin and light. He crumpled it in his hand. When he set it down, it unfolded itself back to its original shape. Before he could examine it further, military vehicles appeared from the opposite direction. Soldiers ordered him to leave the area immediately. At gunpoint. Roberto left, but he kept the piece of debris in his pocket. And he kept the memory of what he saw for the next 30 years. 1 week later, January 20th, 1996, 3:20 in the afternoon. 3 young women, ages 14, 16, and 22, were taking a shortcut home through a vacant lot on the south side of Varginha. It was a route they had walked dozens of times. Nothing special about it. A dirt path between brick walls, some scattered trash, a patch of weeds. They call themselves please video to the into the space. Lover than killer ones is a Juzern moved. I saw the creature, she would later tell investigators, her voice still shaking decades after the event. It was short, maybe 1 meter, 1 meter 20, brown skin, like it was covered in oil, a large head, 3 small bumps on top, and the eyes. The eyes were huge, dark red, like 2 balls of dark blood, and it was looking right at me. She screamed. The other 2 girls saw it and screamed too. They ran, all 3 of them, sprinting through the lot, stumbling over rubble, not stopping until they reached home. The 16-year-old's mother later recalled that her daughters burst through the door, white-faced and hysterical. They said they had seen the devil, the mother told reporters. A local attorney and researcher named Ubirajara Rodriguez met with the girls within days. After listening to their descriptions, he told them, "You didn't see a devil. You didn't see an animal. What you saw was something else entirely." What happened in the hours that followed is where the story of Varginha transforms from a strange sighting into something far more disturbing. Within hours of the girls' encounter, residents in multiple neighborhoods reported unusual military activity. Army trucks, unmarked vehicles, soldiers in formations moving through streets and fields as if conducting a search operation. A local journalist we will call Paulo Ferreira heard the reports and went to investigate. He was not a UFO enthusiast. He was a reporter. When something unusual happened in Varginha, he followed the story. "I went to the area where the girls had their sighting," Paulo recalled. "Soldiers everywhere. They would not let me through. I asked what was happening. They said it was a matter of national security." National security? In a coffee town? On a Saturday afternoon? Paulo went to the regional hospital, Hospital Humanitas. There he found a scene of barely controlled chaos. Doctors rushing through corridors, rooms being cleared, sections of the building cordoned off. He pressed for information. Nobody would speak to him. But through the commotion, he heard voices from a wooded area behind the hospital. People shouting. 2 phrases repeated over and over. "Surround it," and "It's smooth." When Paulo kept asking questions, he was told directly, "If you continue, you will be arrested." He stopped asking, but he never stopped wondering. Of all the testimonies that have emerged from the Varginha incident, none is more extraordinary than the account of the man we will call Dr. Enrique Tavares. Dr. Tavares was a neurosurgeon, board certified, decades of practice, a man whose entire career was built on precision, on evidence, on the measurable and the verifiable. For almost 30 years, he said nothing. Not a word to the press, not a word to researchers, not even to his closest colleagues. And then, in January of 2026, at a press conference at the National Press Club in Washington, D.C., he stood before the cameras and described what he witnessed inside that hospital. He said he was called in to examine something in a sealed ward, something alive. When he entered the room, there was a being on the examination table. Short, perhaps 1 meter 20, brown, oily skin, a disproportionately large cranium, 3 small protuberances on the forehead, and red eyes that tracked his every movement. "I stood there for 4 minutes, the doctor said. I could not move. I could not speak. It was looking at me. And I had the distinct impression that it was communicating. without making a single sound. The doctor paused during his testimony. His hands were trembling. "In 30 years of medicine," he said quietly, "I have never been afraid of a patient. I was not afraid of this being either. I was afraid of what it meant." There is one more witness, and his story does not end well. A young military policeman, whom we will call Sergeant Marcos Ribeiro, was among the soldiers deployed during the recovery operation. According to multiple sources, Ribeiro was part of the team that physically handled at least one of the captured beings. Ribeiro was 23 years old, healthy, athletic, no history of illness. Within days of the operation, he developed a swelling under his left arm. Doctors initially diagnosed it as an abscess. They prescribed antibiotics. The swelling got worse. Over the following weeks, Ribeiro's condition deteriorated rapidly. The infection spread. Standard antibiotics failed. Broad-spectrum antibiotics failed. Nothing worked. On February 12, 1996, just 23 days after the recovery operation, Sergeant Marcos Ribeiro died. He was 23 years old. The military pathologist who performed the autopsy later provided a written statement. He said that in over 50,000 autopsies and more than 1 million microscopic analyses, he had never encountered a bacterium as aggressively virulent as the one that killed Ribeiro. The official cause of death was listed as septicemia, a blood infection. The official explanation said nothing about what kind of bacterium it was, nothing about how he contracted it, and nothing about what he had been handling in the days before he fell ill. The Brazilian military conducted an official investigation into the Varginha incident. Their conclusion, released by the Superior Military Court, was remarkably simple. The 3 girls, according to the military, had seen a local homeless man, a man with a mental disability, who was known to crouch in the dirt near that vacant lot. His name, they said, was Mudinho. Case closed. As for the military activity that day, routine exercises. The hospital commotion? Unrelated. The chemical smell at the crash site? Not addressed. The debris that unfolded itself? Not mentioned. The neurosurgeon's testimony? Not acknowledged. The soldier's death? Septicemia. But there is one more detail that the official investigation cannot explain. According to retired United States Air Force Colonel Richard Garrett, who testified at the 2026 press conference, on or about January 20, 1996, a United States military cargo aircraft, most likely a C-17 Globemaster, departed from an American base and flew to Viracopos Airport in Campinas, Brazil. The plane loaded what the colonel described as unusual cargo. It then departed for an unknown location in the United States. Colonel Garrett, a career fighter pilot with decades of service, outlined exactly what such a mission would require. Flight plans from Air Mobility Command at Scott Air Force Base in Illinois. Coordination with the Air Mobility Wing at Charleston Air Force Base in South Carolina. International flight authorizations. Refueling records at Campinas. Another set of international flight plans for the return trip. Somewhere, the colonel said, there is a paper trail. I am asking the 30 to 40 Americans who would have knowledge of this mission to come forward. In the years following the incident, several witnesses reported being visited by men they described as foreigners. Well-dressed, dark suits. They knew personal details about the witnesses and their families. They offered money for silence. When money was refused, they made threats. The 16-year-old girl who first saw the creature in the vacant lot is now a 46-year-old schoolteacher. For 30 years, she has told the same story, the same details, the same brown, oily skin, the same red eyes, the same feeling she describes as the world stopping. Her story has never changed, not once, not in a single detail. In January of 2026, filmmaker James Fox organized the press conference at the National Press Club on the exact 30th anniversary of the incident. He had spent over 20 years investigating the Varginha case, traveling back and forth between the United States and Brazil, interviewing more than 24 witnesses. At that press conference, United States Congressman Eric Burleson was in attendance. Burleson had recently revealed that in a closed-door Pentagon briefing, lawmakers were shown classified videos depicting objects moving at speeds he described as defying physics. Burleson said Congress was seeking access to approximately 24 additional classified videos. He also said that a whistleblower was helping lawmakers identify where UAP-related records were stored across the federal system. The Varginha incident is not happening in isolation. It is happening in the context of the largest push for government transparency on UAPs in American history. Congressional hearings, whistleblower protections, the creation of the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, and now, a 30th anniversary that has brought Brazilian witnesses to the steps of the United States Capitol. 6 additional Brazilian witnesses who wanted to testify at the press conference were denied visas by the United States State Department. The reason given was that they might overstay their visas. Their video testimonies were recorded in Brazil instead and played at the conference. Today, the city of Varginha embraces its legacy. The bus stops are shaped like flying saucers. A 20-meter water tower in the town center is capped with a disc-shaped reservoir. Alien dolls in football uniforms are sold at the site where the girls saw the creature. But behind the tourism and the souvenirs, there are real people. A teacher who still cannot walk past that vacant lot. A journalist who was threatened with arrest for doing his job. A doctor who carried a secret for 30 years because he knew no one would believe him. And a family who buried a healthy 23-year-old soldier and were told not to ask questions. The Brazilian military says the girls saw a homeless man. The United States government says no cargo plane flew to Campinas that January. The Pentagon says there is no credible evidence of extraterrestrial life. But 4 witnesses with nothing to gain and everything to lose say otherwise. A geography teacher who held debris that rebuilt itself. 3 young women who looked into red eyes and felt time stop. A neurosurgeon who stood 4 minutes beside something that should not exist. And a soldier who touched whatever it was and never came home. Something happened in Varginha, Brazil, in January of 1996. After 30 years, the witnesses are still talking. The government is still denying. And the truth is still classified. This is what they are hiding. And we are just getting started. Subscribe to this channel because we investigate what governments refuse to acknowledge. Leave a comment below. Do you believe the Varginha witnesses? And what do you think was on that cargo plane?